This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm joined by John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. As we sit here on a Monday morning, we get some breaking news that will probably be broken and broken again by the end of the day.
Our timing on these Monday morning visits is terrible.
Sometimes.
We need to just...
I think it really wouldn't matter what time of the day that it is. I was telling you before we started rolling, I saw a tweet from someone over on Sunday night that said, this coming week's already got me exhausted.
I made the mistake of going on Twitter last night and it was blowing up with Michael Avenatti and but anyway, the news that's breaking at this moment is a report from Axios alone, a political news site, that says Rosenstein, is the short version, seems to know he's been summoned to the White House to be fired, so he is resigning, and that may have some implication as to how he is replaced, and how he is replaced as the person in charge of the Mueller investigation is only the major question of our time. So totally hamstrung, absent at this moment, absent further information as to what all this means for whether the president is trying to gut the Mueller investigation and what the effect will be. But Rosenstein seems, by this credible news source, has been, to be on the way out after the New York Times reported that during the Comey matter, Rosenstein talked of the 25th Amendment and of taping the president so he'd have some record of the kinds of things he was hearing from this president. So that's all we know, right? Have you got anything beyond that?
That's all we know right now.
But we should keep
we'll
checking.
We'll turn our alerts on and just
but we,
in the next 10 minutes maybe we'll learn more.
By the time you watch this, we will have a constitutional crisis, or we won't. How's that?
That's expert analysis right there.
Right.
So you couldn't have done any better.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what blew up your Twitter on Sunday night, and that is when we sat here a week ago, we thought by maybe Wednesday of last week that the Kavanaugh confirmation would have sailed on, and he would have been being sworn into the Supreme Court, or at least on his way to do that. It got tricky this week. Now a second allegation of sexual assault has arisen, and potentially a third case is at least been hinted to. I guess before we kind of drill down into the particulars that matter, there's some raw politics at stake here in terms of the Republicans and the Democrats are both trying to shore up a political base for midterm elections, and Kavanaugh is a part of that equation. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, this is the most cynical, unseemly side of politics. The first thing you got to do is take care of your base, and the respective bases of the two parties have become more polarized, more angry, more resentful, and more demanding and more powerful within both parties. So, Democrats first, they stood by ineptly last year, their base thinks, and or 2 years ago, and let the Republicans just sit on the Merrick Garland nomination, and the whole issue of a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to control her own body to this base is at great jeopardy, and it's time to show some, or spunk, Backbone is what time to show. Thank you. So time to show some backbone, and if you can just, this base believes, delay this thing. If you can just keep this thing, hey, we got the midterms and who knows what may happen. The Republican base, Mitch McConnell goes last week to a Republican conservative group and guarantees in this bold, pronounced baritone, Brett Kavanaugh will be on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Going to plow through his nomination.
That was while this allegation was pending. And I have read it was when he had heard that there was this second thing that some Democratic staff members of Judiciary were looking into. Didn't matter to him, we're going to do it. Because the Republicans have the same sort of consideration for the midterms. Whatever chance they've got depends on fervor and turnout in the base. And they've got to stand for, not just for this nomination, because the The Republicans had come up with somebody else, conservative, who would vote on the court as Kavanaugh does, but not let those no-account Democrats get away with behaving this way. So that's the raw, unseemly, tragic, I say in Sunday's column, cancerous political situation that we confront. Now, as I think you may follow up, there are other substantive things to discuss here and legitimate issues, but at its core, the motivation is as you prompt me to reply.
So let's talk about some of the specifics of at least the first allegation, and we do know more about the second allegation here, and that is that it's not about criminal behavior in terms of punishment, because the statute of limitations is long gone on this. This is really more about character, and so you've got Democrats saying this is a reflection of this potential Supreme Court justice's character, and you have Republicans in the White House saying this is an assassination attempt on this guy's character. But the allegations and the whole conversation around sexual assault has really, I think, risen and elevated in terms of a national dialogue. We're having another moment, I would argue.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill was a moment, but it was a moment long preceding the Me Too movement that we've watched for the last two and a half, 3 years. And compounding that, so while the women's movement has made political strides and become a movement, and while the whole issue of this male dominance and male entitlement toward women is now a major defining issue, this issue arises, so that makes it much bigger, more emotional, even than Thomas Hill, which was an epic matter. But beyond that, Kavanaugh is, I think we can say, the fifth vote of a social conservative, pro-life interpretation of the Constitution. Whether that would actually, whether there's nuance in the cases they'll get, and whether he would actually, whether this court with him on it would actually overturn Roe v. Wade entirely, that's, I don't know. But he gives you a fifth. He replaces Kennedy, who was the swing, who kept this sort of tenuous situation we have now. So it's got everything. And the resentments, I'm telling you, I wrote a column yesterday in which I tried and failed to tell both sides in terms of the cancer of our emotions on this thing. I said, we're likely to look up in a few months, and women, many women, will look upon their U.S. Supreme Court, which they ought to respect, and they will see two sexual offenders. Some people said you're convicting them before they're proven guilty. No, I'm just saying that's what they'll see. Others, if that's the case, conservatives will look on the Supreme Court and say, thank God they're there. They are heroes who withstood the smears of those bad Democrats. That's where we are now. And 22%, 2 out of 9 of our members of our Supreme Court will into perpetuity, or for a generation, they're going to contribute to that kind of ideological divide, that kind of resentment, that kind of discrediting of our ultimate system arbiters of justice. It is not, okay, and then the other difference that people are having trouble with, as you say, people are saying that something I've written, convicted him, violates the innocent until proven guilty principle. No. First of all, I don't know what happened. I'm just telling how people are going to react politically. But innocent until proven guilty has to do with criminal charges. If you cannot be convicted unless you are proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We're not at this point, and remind me to say something about Maryland law, but we're not at this point considering Kavanaugh as a criminal charge or for prosecution. And there's not enough evidence there to do it if anybody's considering it. What we're doing is considering this gentleman, whether he is worthy for this lofty nomination, the highest nomination we can give in our political system. So and that is a matter of your own judgment. Mm-hmm. So that's the fight. It's not an innocent until proven guilty in terms of evidence. It's a question of is this guy the kind we want on the Supreme Court? And so that's the fight, and it's not a fight that you can decide in terms of or hear the facts and this one side prevails over the other. It's according to your sense of the guy. And that's probably guided for most people by a preconceived notion anyway. Mm-hmm. So it is an incredibly destructive, cancerous time in our politics.
I think the other thing too that is just another dimension to this debate too is the women that have come forward, it's their story. It, like you said, the proof is not there unless there are some corroborating witnesses that could be brought forward to speak to this. But at the same time, you have heard so many different stories. You've seen a social media movement of people telling their stories, why I didn't report.
Right.
And the fact that I've talked to women that I know as a result of this in this last
week. I wrote
week
about one Sunday
who have said, you know, I was sexually assaulted and I didn't say anything, but I can tell you, I can remember who it was and I can tell you a lot of the details of what happened, but I don't remember everything, but it happened. And if that person were to run for governor, if that person was to be nominated for the Supreme Court, if that person were to run for president, I would feel compelled.
See, that's the difficulty of this issue. These women come forward, and both of them resisted for a while being named because they knew what would happen to them, and it's intimidating to take on the political power structure. They told their stories. Their stories, by their own admission, have holes in them. They don't remember everything. The young woman from Yale, Ramirez, she was drinking with these guys, and there are gaps in what she remembers. And she heard what somebody yelled, but she can't say specifically certain things, and she's not saying. She's just saying this is something that needs, and both these women are saying, this ought to be investigated by the FBI. I find this interesting. If anything is pivotal in considering this matter in terms of relative merit, both those are saying, here's my story. Get your best law enforcement people and go talk to people who might have been there, who might have known us. Take the power of the G-man's role as an investigator and see what you come up with. The other side, the Kavanaugh side, is saying, no, we don't need that. I'm not saying the FBI could get to the bottom of something that's so sketchy that is as sketchy as both these allegations. But I'm saying one side is willing to say, listen to my story and put your best investigators on it. I think that's, to me, as one person considering these charges, I think that's telling. And I also know the emotions are so great. Well, I think I've pretty well belabored that point. But when these women come forward, and they didn't really want to come forward by name, but the circumstances put them in this position. And now they are being attacked. One of them, Ford, is in hiding apparently, having hired security. And they are being, their reputations are being besmirched. That further fuels this feeling in this women's movement that this is what happens to women when they dare to challenge powerful men. And then the other side is saying, well, this is just Democratic hit job, and these women have been put up to it. This is just dreadful for anybody who takes a case to the U.S. Supreme Court in which that is going to be tainted by this kind of stain on its membership. Either way, anyway, however it turns out.
I would say that what are you going to watch for this next week? But there's too much on the radar right now.
Well, we need to find out. We need to find out
if watching the Kavanaugh stuff.
Yeah, we may have a constitutional crisis, or we may not.
And there may be something else. Trump's at the UN today, so I mean, there's the possibility for some international diplomacy and relations as well. So.
Yeah, well, yeah.
How about you come back at the end of the week and we'll capsulize the week?
Well, you talking about Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's come back and maybe we'll know a little something.
Okay.
Or more likely, there'll be more instability in our culture and society.
All right. John Brummett with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, as always, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. That's all for the day's show. We'll see you next time.
Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation provides electric energy across 2/3 of Arkansas. This is an exciting time in our energy history, with incredible progress being made in renewable energy and storage technologies. As our energy portfolio continues to diversify, we'll maintain an all-the-above strategy to provide reliable and affordable electricity. Ever since the first light bulbs were placed in our members' homes, the electric cooperatives have been the solutions provider for our members, and we want to continue that well into the future.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.